Okay, and now the lightning talks begin. The first one will be John Manning, and I guess, start the timer, because remember, setup counts as the time.
Hi everyone. Hi. So my name is John, and I made a little thing called Yarn Spinner. Yarn Spinner is a tool for writing dialogue trees. So you may not know what a dialogue tree is. If you've ever played a video game, by the way, I'm from a little video game dev company called Secret Lab. We're kind of small, pretty great.
Baumgold?
So this is what a dialogue tree looks like. If you ever played a game where you have a conversation with another character like this is a dialogue tree. These are the most common way that video game writers structure interactive conversations. So dialogue trees have been around for a long time, and we've seen a number of tools come and go to make them. However, they tend to be written for very specific games, and they're also usually very visual in their construction. So this is Chat Mapper. It's a generic, very commercial tool. It's quite popular. It's very powerful, but it's also very imposing. You can probably see there's a lot going on in this application. This is the DLG editor, which is the editor used in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. If you ever played that game, raise your hand. Yeah, some of you, brilliant. This game had a ton of dialogue, and I'm very impressed that they were able to do all their dialogue in this. Because, yeah. So, current writing tools for this kind of content could be made better. To address this, a lot of importers from text exist. So there's dedicated writing apps like RTC Draft, Final Cut can be imported into these kinds of tools. But this slows down the edit, import, and test loop, which is really important to iterate on your content and make sure that it's really good. Additionally, you've got to deal with game-specific features and also the commands. You saw in the previous picture how there's like animations that can be triggered when a certain line is run, or maybe the camera angle needs to get changed as well. So it's hard to make this generic. So that's why I wrote Yarn Spinner. Yarn Spinner is an interpreter for the Yarn dialogue language, which you'll see some of in a bit. It's open source, and I think it's pretty great. It was mostly written in tandem with a video game coming out later this year called Night in the Woods, which you should go and check out. It's based on a language called Twine. If you've ever heard of Twine, raise your hand. Yeah, so, oh, hey, very enthusiastically raising your hand, very good. In Twine, you basically write a chunk of text, and then you can link that chunk of text to other chunks of text, and you can navigate between them. It was originally designed for interactive fiction and choose-your-own-adventure novels. Yarn builds on this and focuses very much on dialogue. So you write a text file which is directly executed. Here's an example of some text being written inside the Yarn editor. So give a second to glance over that. And here it is in gameplay. So we have a player interacting with the character, and the text is being delivered iteratively, one character at a time. Choices appear based on what was available to the character at a time. You notice there were more options in the text than were presented there. So there we go. It's very, very quick. There's no importing. There's no laborious visual construction, and it allows for very, very rapid editing. So this system isn't just a proof of concept, it's being used in some real games as well. This is the rather critically acclaimed Lost Constellation, which uses the Yarn language and Yarn Spinner. In addition, this is Sunflower, which is a visual novel that uses the Yarn language. You'll notice that it's not a side-scrolling adventure game like the other two that you just saw, but it shows you how you can use dialogue trees in this kind of structure. So, yeah. It's kind of cool. So Yarn Spinner is available for use right now. You can find more information at this address. I'm Disposter on Twitter, and also my game studio is the Secret Lab. I think most of us are actually here in the audience today. Raise your hand, guys. Yay. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next talk is going to be from David Baumgold, and start the timer. This quick time makes everyone really anxious. It's fun. Like lightning.
Oh, aha. This one. Better? Better? Awesome. All right. My name is David Baumgold. I go by DB, and I want to show you this thing called Lektor that I found and I'm using, and I'm very excited about it. So as I said, I'm a web developer, and I'm not a documentarian, but I like making websites, and I like making websites that are clear, fast, and contain lots of information. So there are basically two different types of websites in the world. There's dynamic sites, which are like Facebook or Twitter. They have programming languages running behind them. And there's simple static sites, which is more like something like GeoCities, where you write the HTML and the same thing is served out to everybody. Static sites are a lot simpler and a lot faster and a lot cheaper to run as well. My personal website is a static website, and I pay maybe 25 cents a year in hosting costs. So to give you an idea of that. There's a well-known static site generator called Jekyll, which is popularized by GitHub, allows you to write static websites very easily, very efficiently. The problem with Jekyll is that it's all static files, and if you're not a developer, if you're not a programmer, it's a little intimidating to get started with. Whereas a more classic example of a dynamic website is WordPress, which is a content management system or a blogging platform. It allows you to go into an admin interface and put in the content that you want to put on your website through a familiar HTML editing interface. It's a lot easier to use for people who are non-technical. So some people have favorite authors or musicians. I follow this one developer who does a lot of really cool stuff, and he put out this new piece of software called Lektor, which he said was a static site CMS. And I was thinking about these two different things and saying, how can these two things go together? I really wasn't sure, so I checked it out, and it turns out it is a static site generator that has a dynamic admin site component along with it. So I was really fascinated with this idea, and I decided to start exploring with it. And I wanted to show you a quick live demo of the sorts of things that I found here. If I can manage how to do that with only one hand. I might have to put down the mic. Oh, thank you. All right, so I have here my personal website, which is a simple static site, and it is maintained in Lektor as a set of text files over here. And, oh, right. Let me.
This is why you don't do live demos, people.
I wanted to try. Okay, so here's the website. If I have the text over here, there are a couple directories in here. The gist of it is that if I run Lektor server, then it's going to run locally on my computer, and it gives me this nice little editing interface. The way that all of this is set up is that there's a model file which has information about the fields that happen in each page. So on here I have, for example, a title and a body. I can go in here and I can edit and add a new line, save it, and it comes up on the website as well. So it acts very much like a content management system, but in terms of what gets put out, it's simple static files. There's no login system. It's very easy to host it on Amazon S3 or something like that. It's very cheap, and it's very fast to get up and running. So in addition, another thing I wanted to point out here is I was talking with someone else at this conference about what if you could have a content management system that was, instead of backed by a normal database, it's actually backed by a Google Docs system. Because a lot of people use Google Docs when editing files and getting collaboration between people. So I ended up hacking together something really quick and simple that does that with Lektor. And it's a little bit hard to show a quick demo when I only have 45 seconds left, but I'm going to try. And this requires me to actually authenticate with Google Drive. So I get this little key here, paste it in, and that's going to actually use the Google Drive API to go out and fetch a document that I already have here, which has some sample text. And then, when I refresh the page and go over here, I have this document. And if I make changes to it, then I'll be able to see those changes reflected in my static site every time that I redeploy it. So if you're interested in learning more about how to use this system or how to do the Google Drive integration, talk with me, and I'll be available later in the conference. Thank you.
So Lektor was actually made by the same group of people who built Sphinx, which is my personal favorite documentation tool. So that's how you know it's good. It's really cool technology, and it really kind of is mind-bending, so I do recommend it. And start time, and where is it going? Okay. How do I get the other view? Here. Shoot. What's the presenter view? That's it, I think. Sorry. Okay. All right. Woo. So, hi, I'm Matt Ness. Glad to be here. I'm from Splunk down in San Francisco, and if you attended the conference last year, you may remember my talk about scenario-based documentation, the one where I rambled on about Dungeons and Dragons and fairy tales and such. So here I am with a lightning talk. My talk is called Cats, the Perfectest Pets. Today I want to convince you that cats are the best pets ever. It shouldn't take long because first off, cats are cute. Some people say this stops being true once they stop being kittens, but I disagree. Second, cats are fun. They're full of antics and excitement, even in the middle of the night. Next, cats are easy to take care of. It's true. They tell you when they're out of food, and you'll definitely figure out when that litter box needs to be changed. Other than that, they pretty much run themselves. Finally, cats are eerie, like horror movies. That wild thrill you get when you think something is lurking and thinking evil thoughts about you from the dark shadows of your home? Well, with cats, you can have it all the time. Actually, my bad. I'm forgetting who I'm talking to. You're all interested in writing docs, not petting cats. This is my talk for the weird, crazy cat guy conference. My apologies. Let me get this fixed up. Okay, actually, this is more like it. Right, your documentation audience. Are you taking it for granted? It's a good question, and it leads to more questions. Who are you writing for? What are their needs? Are you operating on possibly faulty assumptions? How long has it been since you last checked them? And if you're a member of a team of writers, do you have a formal set of audience definitions that you're working from? Or are you hoping that each of you is thinking of your audiences in the same way? When I was a fledgling tech writer, the audience I wrote for was a mysterious, shadowy, shambling horde. After that first employer, we had very little direct interaction with our readers and could only guess what their true motives were when they used our software products. We cleared things up a bit by dividing product documentation up by role. User manuals for the low information end users, admin manuals for the people who maintained and customized system implementations. So simple, right? But it's likely that each of my coworkers back then had a slightly different understanding of who they were writing for. When I joined Splunk 8 years ago, we operated under a similar manner of assumptions. Our earliest manuals were named user, admin, and dev. Eventually, we added a knowledge manager manual in there as well. This all worked well enough 8 years ago when Splunk had one core product and 4 writers. We even wrote down some broad audience definitions. Then one day we realized our team was now 25 and counting. The core product was now part of a platform of 4, and we were putting out specialized apps and add-ons at a rapid clip. Our documentation was no longer organized around roles, and our manuals had proliferated. Lots had changed, but our audience definitions had not. So we put together a kind of tiger team of writers who had deep product knowledge and had them come up with a picture of who our audiences were now. Each team had specific knowledge of a particular segment of our overall audience set, and they pieced together a new and detailed list of audience definitions. Our project confirmed a suspicion that many of us had suspected for some time. The range of audiences we were writing documentation for was far more diverse than we'd realized. We broke our previous audience list out from 4 categories to 10. There are now 3 admin levels and 3 developer levels, and a formal distinction between developers who connect third-party software products to Splunk and developers who customize Splunk implementations and build Splunk apps. Again, a lot of writers kind of knew these distinctions existed, but nobody had seen them explicitly defined. Having them written down is already helping newer writers focus their documentation. And in one case, it's helped a product manager to get a better idea of the audience they are trying to reach with their upcoming features. Our takeaways from this project. There's much content in the tech writing literature about the work of audience definition.
we'd hoped to find some material but out there to give us, oh really? Okay. Really? All right. All right.
Okay, well done. They'll be online, right? Will you provide the file online?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can see the takeaways online. Next, we have Rachel Whitton, and start the time. This is really intense. And then microphone.
Yes. Okay. Almost there. All right. Here we go. So my name is Rachel. I work for Pantheon. It's a web development platform. And I came last year to write the docs as kind of a novice in this industry. And it took some time for things to kind of really click in place for me to be able to begin working in the nuggets of gold that we got from this conference, which were, how to work in an agile workflow and how to empower our contributors and really focus on their experience. So we had two main goals when we left, which was one, improve our contributor experience, and the second was we wanted to automate some of our more redundant tasks and really be able to focus as content authors. We wanted to be able to leave the boring, repetitive stuff to the computers, and we wanted to really be in the business of forming and generating really great, awesome, valuable content for our users. And I'm just gonna give you a quick demonstration of how we've been able to really move on those action items and how to actually implement that maybe in something of what you're doing. So first, here's our main website. We're working off the assumption that people were going to go to our GitHub repository and they were going to take a look at our very complicated setup instructions, and that's how they were going to really move through our pipeline in order to become a successful contributor. That was our action item that we were measuring. We wanted to really reduce the amount of work, and in order for us to truly understand that, we didn't really get a good grasp on it until we sat down with our most powerful and most active contributors. We asked them directly, how do you contribute to docs? What's your workflow look like? And we kind of, have this assumption that they went through this local setup. They ran the site locally. It's a static HTML site built with Sculpin, and we just assumed that they were running all of this stuff locally, when in reality, they were going to our GitHub repository and clicking edit. So we made a few changes. We added the edit button as a call to action within the actual doc links, to kind of make a shortcut into how they were able to really, truly interact with us on a contributor level. And then from there, we did an automation test suite. So I, as a moderator, I don't want to spend too much time going over and QAing things like, do the links work? Are the images showing up? Is this, a page that follows our syntax guide and stuff like that. So we built, using continuous integration platform Circle CI, we use them to run a series of automated tests. We use BHAT test, we do HTML proofer, which is HTML validation, and then we also do accessibility tests to make sure that whatever publishing that we're doing, whatever updates that we're pushing, we're not regressing on accessibility so that people with vision impairments continue to be able to use our docs to the fullest of their ability. So we have some baseline thresholds that we set up, and then we really wanted to focus a lot on peer-to-peer reviews. So we have here an example pull request, which you would get to just by clicking that edit button on our actual live website. So if you're on a page and you want to edit something, you have value to contribute, or maybe you see something that is a typo or a mistake, you're then empowered as an audience member to start a pull request and get new updated information out there on the page. So this is an example here of what our system will do. It will first run the suite of tests that we've set up, and then it will actually deploy to a cloud development environment the code that you were suggesting, and then comment back for immediate peer-to-peer review. So we kind of eliminated this idea that you have to work locally on your machine in order to see your code in effect. So if you were to click on the link that gets automated from Circle, it would take you to a static environment. You see the URL up there is not our live URL. This is essentially a staging environment. And you can go through and you can actually verify the content that is being added by your contributor. And you could,
Thank you.
if something fails, you could see it on Circle.
Thank you, thank you. All right, next up, we have Colin Torretta, and he has no slides.
Yes, all right. Wasn't expecting that reception to no slides, but maybe I should just end it now and on a high note. Anyways, so I want to talk about managing wikis for internal audiences. I've spent the last almost 15 years working almost exclusively on internal documentation for operation engineering audiences. And one of the things I've noticed over my years is wikis are pretty prolific. Pretty much everybody at this point has a wiki somewhere, and they pretty much universally suck. I mean, how many people out there work at a place with a wiki that's a mess? Yeah, that's what I thought. So the reason why companies pick wikis is understandable, right? I mean, everybody's heard of Wikipedia. It's amazing. Everybody uses it, blah, blah, blah. Plus, they tend to be free, which is a big perk because nobody likes spending money on internal documentation. So they pick wikis and, they say, hey, Wikipedia works without a resource. It's community driven. Well, and so they assume, all right, an internal wiki is going to be the same way. All the engineers, all the ops guys, they're just going to naturally spend their time and, make the wiki a better place, In all my years, that is the single biggest lie I've heard in documentation. That does not happen. So I regularly get brought into companies and I have to deal with 5 to 8 years of technical debt in their wiki. And I'm brought in to try to turn into a usable resource again because the amount of data and information in these wikis, if you try to quantify it, is jaw-dropping. The amount of time and money put into these things is astronomical to have it result in a useless site. Stephen Hawking a couple years ago revised his view on black holes and suggested that all the information that's brought into a black hole isn't actually teleported to another, whatever, galaxy dimension, what have you, is actually outputted just on the other side of the black hole, but in unrecognizable data and unrecognizable information just streamed out. That's why I call wikis, most internal wikis, black holes of knowledge. This huge amount of data goes into it, but just nothing ends up coming out of it. So what happens to you as a documentarian or as a tech writer? How do you make the wiki a better place? One of the best ways is to really push for a dedicated resource. Every single good wiki out there has a dedicated manager, dedicated resource. Look at Wikipedia. They have 500 full-time employees and 15,000 volunteers who work on their site. This isn't community-driven. This is a small group of dedicated people working hard to make this site good. So as an internal documentation proponent, it's difficult because you're never going to be able to be the sole editor. And I know, at my last job, I was the sole internal writer for 500 engineers. I quickly realized that actually trying to write everything for them was just going to drive me insane. So to make the wiki a better place, what I started doing was I created a wiki help site, really. It was guidance on content architecture, it was templates on making pages, it was highlighting certain sections of the site and saying, are you curious what makes a good wiki page? Go here. This feature, this team, they did it right. Go follow these guys. Oftentimes that would be enough, but you end up spending more of your time as an evangelist, as a cheerleader, going around and just encouraging and reminding people, look, you can't just dump stuff into the wiki and expect it to, be useful forever. Inevitably, you need to go in and touch it. Documents are a living thing, especially wikis. And once you can get, especially engineers, to realize that, because they're used to a living code, they're used to software development life cycles, realize that documentation is the same thing. Every piece of documentation has a life cycle. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Encourage people to retire documentation. If I could just say one thing across this, retire old documentation. It's not that hard. Generally, you can figure out what pages aren't being used or have low value. And if you can just remove the noise out of the wiki and raise that signal to noise ratio to an acceptable point, that alone can turn the wiki into a usable resource again. It took me about 3 years to work down on 8 years of technical debt at my last job. But by the time I left, the wiki was a really useful resource again. And so, 12 seconds left. So I encourage everybody, when it comes to a wiki, remember and encourage all the documentarians and everybody around you that the wiki and documentation is a living thing and needs to be cared for, like a cat.
Thanks. I didn't realize we're going to get to a sixth person, so I didn't actually read your name. What's your name? I didn't get to read it. Not sure. So this is our final one. Oh, Mo. Good. Welcome, Mo. There's another Mo here. That's confusing. We're setting up. The time should be running. It is running. No rush. But well done. I mean, I'm sad that I'm kicking people off the stage, but at the same time, we were able to get 6 instead of 5. So. Yeah, you can talk without slides, as we've learned. I see nothing. So, how many of you are from San Francisco? Hello, my people. How many of you are from North Carolina? Hello, my people. Here we go.
Right. So, here I am, alone on this stage again. So, I gave a talk 2 years ago at Write the Docs about taking meeting notes for curation, distribution, and for managing. This time, my talk's more personal, how to take notes at events and meetings for my own use. My note-taking skills sucked several years ago. My note skills were nothing but text all over the place. There were a lot of problems with that. First of all, it was visually ugly. I was a perfectionist. I wanted to capture everything. There was this fear of missing out. And also, I had no idea what was priority and what was not. The first Write the Docs conference 4 years ago was a huge aha moment. The talk by Jennifer Hartnett Henderson about sketchnoting made me realize that my notes don't have to be all about text. It's okay to actually use duo coding theory to write and also sketch for better memory retention. If people looked at me in meetings saying, is he drawing in the meetings again? I could say, you know what, I'm doing actual work. So that was a great aha moment. But I knew that I could do a better job of capturing notes. Several moments of clarity hit me. First was realization that a tool that I use hundreds of times a day because I'm a social media addict, smartphone, and their emojis. Emojis are amazing things because you can take an idea and moods, combine them into one, and you draw something, and instead of taking 20 words to express an idea, you can just do it with a couple strokes. That was genius. Another thing I really enjoyed or learned to improve my notes was minimalism. That was a theme that we've talked about in previous Write the Docs conferences. I don't have to capture all the notes, but just the key points. It was a nice liberation. Another thing I learned, which I stole from the world of design, was white space. Before, my notes were just all over a piece of paper because I was a cheap ass and I didn't want to waste paper. But I realized that it's easier for me to give myself enough space and go out and buy extra paper, use icons or emojis for key things like action items, for who's going to do what, or what I thought about or felt about certain things. Those things have helped me make my notes or my note-taking better. And I want to credit Write the Docs conference because it has improved the way I capture information. And also, it made me a better documentarian. Thank you.
Right on. Okay, so we are going to reconvene back in approximately 10 minutes.